Some of the leaders who emerged as most powerful during this chaotic time were not necessarily of noble lineage. Their military ability and sometimes less than honorable actions pulled them to the top of the social ladder.
In the chaos of 1500s warfare, you have people rising from rather humble origins, and you also have people rising from rather seemly origins, people who at key moments decided to leave their lord, to die in battle, go back, take control of the castle.
Out of this turmoil, in 1568, a samurai chieftain of modest beginnings emerged. His name was Oda Nobunaga, and he would attempt to turn the country around. Nobunaga hailed from a small rural fiefdom, but his outstanding military skill soon gained him many allies and brought him to prominence. He was an ambitious man, so much so that he dreamed of ruling the entire country. Indeed, the motto on his seal was to bring the whole country under one sword, and he didn't plan to do it by relying solely on military might. He started with a more subtle means, arranged marriages. Nobunaga married himself and two of his immediate family to members of other powerful clans. These unions established a formidable power base. He then began the process of intimidating other warlords to join with him. Those who refused his overtures, he fought, using every means at his disposal, including the latest tools of destruction, firearms. The first firearms were introduced to Japan in 1543, when a Chinese junk was blown off course and landed on a Japanese island. On board were 3 Portuguese travelers. Each of these Westerners carried a gun, a matchlock musket. When one of the Portuguese shot a duck, the daimyo in the region became fascinated with the weapons and purchased all 3 of them. He then ordered his chief metalworker to copy them. Guns soon spread throughout the land. Many samurai resisted their use, a decision they would later regret.
The introduction of the matchlock musket transforms warfare in Japan. And the warriors who adopt it quickly decimate the warlords who don't adopt it, or don't adopt it as well.
Oda Nobunaga welcomed the new weapons with open arms and mastered their use in battle. At the height of his power, he incorporated a force of at least 3,000 gunners into his vast armies. In a famous battle near Nagashino Castle in 1575, he formed at least 1,500 gunners into 3 ranks behind pickets. He ordered them to fire in volleys, one rank moving up to fire, while another rank reloaded. With this tactic, the gunners held off a force many times their size.
If you use them correctly, you can destroy mounted cavalry. Mounted cavalry at this point being mostly archers. These are the battles that decide the balance of power in the late 1500s in Japan.
But despite Oda Nobunaga's formidable political and military prowess, he would never live to see a united Japan. Like so many of history's most ambitious men, Nobunaga was assassinated before he had fully achieved his dream, cut down in 1582 by one of his own disgruntled generals. The exact motive behind the killing is unclear, but it is thought the angry general felt he had not been properly rewarded for his services. By the time of his death at age 48, Oda Nobunaga had united a full 1/3 of the Japanese daimyo, but it would be left to his successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, to complete the task. Hideyoshi was another forceful leader that had risen from humble origins and reached prominence due to his fighting ability.
Here is someone who demonstrates the social mobility that comes with constant warfare. He rose from status of sandal carrier. This is someone who ran alongside a lord and had his sandals ready when he got off his horse, and he rises to be the supreme warlord in Japan.
Following Nobunaga's assassination, Toyotomi Hideyoshi immediately tracked down and killed the assassin. An act of loyalty, perhaps, but also a timely political move. Nobunaga had an heir, a young son, who should rightfully have succeeded his father. But Hideyoshi capitalized on the glory he won through his act of revenge and seized power for himself.
But he can't be seen as a usurper because, good heavens, he didn't assassinate Oda Nobunaga. In fact, he tracked down his assassin and punished him.
As the new most powerful daimyo in Japan, Hideyoshi took over where Nobunaga had left off. He continued the process of wrangling lesser warlords under his central control, using a combination of subtle political maneuvering and ruthless military might. By 1590, all of Japan's daimyo had submitted to Hideyoshi's authority. Oda Nobunaga's dream of a united Japan was now a reality. Then Hideyoshi did something quite surprising to protect his own position. The moment he attained complete power, he implemented a sort of gun control. He confiscated all swords from the peasantry and merchant class.
Marvelous pretext for that is, of course, the swords will be melted down and they'll be used to create a huge image of the Buddha. So when you give up your swords, you are not giving up power and you're not giving up a right to defend yourself or a means of defending yourself. You're simply helping Toyotomi Hideyoshi bring the country to peace through the healing powers of this great Buddha image.
Hideyoshi didn't stop with confiscating weapons.
He slams the door on social mobility. He issues edicts saying that if you are not a samurai now, you never will be. And it's probably because, knowing how commoners could rise to power, he was acutely aware of what a threat that could be to his own legitimacy.
He strictly separated samurai, farmers, and townspeople, and began what would become a formal system of 4 social classes: samurai, farmer, artisan, and merchant, in that order. This classification also put in place criteria that set samurai apart from the rest of society.
People had to choose whether they would be a commoner or a samurai. A samurai meant they had the privilege of having 2 swords, and they could serve a lord, but they would lose all ties to their lands. And one who wanted to be a commoner supposedly couldn't have any weapons but could hold land. That's where we really see the division happening. And from that point on, you see all samurais must have 2 swords as a symbol of their status.
The 2 swords represented a badge of rank, much like the sidearm worn by a modern police officer. But there was also a practical purpose. A long sword could be cumbersome indoors and was typically removed by a samurai upon entering a building. The additional short sword at his side allowed him to remain armed at all times. For the lower ranks of society, lack of respect for a wearer of 2 swords could mean death.
Samurai have, in theory, the right of kiristegomen, which basically means if a commoner does something extremely inappropriate, you can take their head off and then just apologize and explain why this was so offensive. And that's part of how commoners live, with this strange sense that they can get away with a lot, but you never quite know when you're going to cross the line and lose your head.
Even with all his power, one official honor would always elude Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the coveted title of shogun. According to ancient tradition, the title could only be bestowed on a warlord by the emperor, and only after the designee had proved his descent from the ancient Minamoto clan, the legendary family who had established the first permanent shogunate. With Hideyoshi's humble origins, that was an impossibility. In consolation, the imperial family, which by this time had almost no political power, but in the eyes of the people still held divine authority, conferred on Hideyoshi the substitute title of regent. This would open a door in the future for a new leader among the samurai, a skilled general who was waiting in the wings and could lay claim to the title of shogun. This man would soon create a shogunal dynasty that would persevere for 250 years.